Hey, I think we're live, Jamie. How are you?
We're
uh,
live. I'm
yeah, we're
great.
live. What's going on?
Hello,
Happy Friday.
everybody.
Hi,
Yes.
everybody. Public Enemy, what's happening? I commented back to you a few times yesterday. I was trying to get in there and try to give people some love in the comments. Eric, how are you doing? Poland in the house, Super Sunny D. I know I haven't been making videos to let people know that we're here live on Fridays. And so I assume it's going to be less people each week. We really have to make some videos just to keep letting people know. But since we haven't, we've got a nice small group today, and the recording will be here for people after. So get your questions ready, people. If you have some. Hi, Joelle. Welcome, welcome. Eric, it's evening there. It's only noon here. Okay, so I know Jamie has some questions ready for us. So let's dig in because I have to get off on time today
Yep. So you
because I
have a
have a
wonderful.
meeting. So, yep.
All right. So, one
Hey,
question
David.
from Mato. Can you please answer an important question for me regarding NoFap and cannabis? I get medical cannabis, and I would like to know does THC have an impact on my reboot? The flatline hit me hard, and cannabis made it more relief, but my fear is that it isn't a good idea. So if you could please answer that, that would be great.
Yeah, that's a great question. I've answered that for people many times. Is that, yeah, it definitely can impact recovery and reboot because, well, first of all, it disinhibits you. So I've talked to a lot of people, and when people use cannabis, whether it's medical or non-medical, that's what it's designed to do. In the way that it impacts your brain, it creates disinhibition. And what that means is you will be much more likely to go down the slippery slope because that same neural mechanism is the thing that takes the edge off of pain. So in taking the edge off your pain, then you put yourself at risk for, being sucked back in. So it becomes a slippery slope. So being careful in its use if you need to use it for medical reasons, and really making sure you get some fences up in terms of a defense, and then also creating an offense that makes it so that your brain doesn't need to be regulated as often or as much, or in those times when you might be at risk. So just be careful in its use. But that's a great question. And if it wasn't medical, it's best to try to stop using marijuana because it can do that. And I had a question from someone who I answered that, does coffee impact reboot? Anything you put into your system that is a stimulant or calms your nervous system can impact you. But at the same time, like even when it comes to marijuana, here we're focused on, unwiring that brain pattern that keeps you going back for porn. And that's important because that is the number one thing that can damage your brain. And of course, these other behaviors, like some of them aren't good. And my husband and I were joking this morning when we were hanging out. He's like, if everybody just did, including him and me, he's like, if all of us just did the things we knew that are healthy for us, instead of doing the things that aren't. David, I love coffee too, so there's nothing wrong with coffee. But the thing is, like, you don't want to give up coffee while you're trying to give up porn. It's way more important to give up porn and keep coffee in the mix. But if you drink a lot of coffee, then, try to reduce the amount of coffee and be careful on how you consume things, marijuana, social media, anything. Be careful, become really aware of what it's doing to your system. I saw a really good question. Oh, I'm going to jump in and answer Kikdo's question on how quickly can one become an addict, because that is an amazing question. That's a great question. And, of course, there's no one answer for all people, but and I've made a bunch of videos saying the younger that you are, your brain becomes hijacked, but it can happen really quickly and it feels differently to all people, but it definitely can happen in one viewing where your brain gets this massive rush and your system tries to calibrate itself, but it wants to go back for more. And the younger that happens to you, the seeds of addiction are being planted. Now, the reason I'm here with pornography in particular is it is so sleuthy. It's so tricky. You can't even see it coming. Like when you're young, you go to that habit, you have no idea that you're literally planting the seeds and watering them daily for a really bad addiction as you get older. And of course, the more you water the seeds, the faster the plant grows. And that's the reality of it. So, there's so many factors in terms of frequency, consistency, and intensity, how early you began, how many years. There's lots and lots of factors, but fast. The seeds are planted fast. So remember that. And the more you water them, the faster it's going to grow and the harder it's going to be to pull out that root structure that you're growing. And that's difficult stuff.
So Seymour says, what is it doing to your system? So when you do become addicted.
Yeah, what it does to your system is that it's creating a literal internalized chemical dependency. So it's changing the way that your brain uses electrical energy, and then that changes the way that the neurotransmitters flow, which goes back and changes the way that your brain uses electrical energy. It feeds itself, and it becomes a diseased, out of ease, not an eased nervous system. So your brain and your nervous system starts functioning in a way that you have to go back for more or you don't feel good. And that's the essence of addiction. It's a literal negative feedback loop. A negative feedback loop, which I never explained this in the videos. And I thought this because it's too confusing to try to get to this next layer of a negative feedback loop. But this is a good place to talk about it quickly, hopefully easily, is that an actual negative feedback loop. So you hear me talk about it in the videos where I say there's no horizontal feedback loop. There's either an upward spiral, you're doing positive things that heal your brain, you use new positive routines, and then that moves you in a positive cycle up to create the life that you want and accomplish your goals and learn skills so you can keep doing that. A negative feedback loop, the way I talk about it in the videos, is that when you start to consume pornography, it changes your brain so that then your brain's functioning worse, which then dictates your behaviors. Behaviors are, there's no dopamine in the world, so you don't want to go to work and you don't want to hang out with people. You just want to go back to the screen. So it gets you negative outcomes. But an important part of a negative feedback loop is that you have to go back for more because you can't just be without it. And that's how alcoholism, alcohol misuse works. When you get to a point with alcohol or porn, this is a really good defining factor. When people go, how do I know if I'm addicted? Stop watching it, see what happens. So if you stop watching it and you can just go on with your life and there's very little impact to you and you don't have the urges to go back and you don't have those cravings, you don't have any withdrawal symptoms, then you're good. Then your system hadn't changed so much that it has to go back. A negative feedback loop is you have to go back because you don't feel good without it. And that's why people, when they have alcohol misuse, tips into abuse, tips into alcoholism, that's when people have to get up and day drink because they can't even get through the day without drinking, because when alcohol's not in their system, it's painful to exist. And it's the same thing with the neurochemicals in pornography.
Oh, thank you, David. That was a very nice contribution of 200. That's amazing.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really, really amazing. Thank you so much for the donations. And I saw somebody bought the $20 program. We're still selling the $19.99 program. All the money is going to establish the nonprofit. And we are in the midst of creating, or at least I'm in the midst of planting seeds. Talk about planting seeds. I spent my morning planting seeds on a digital program for teenagers so that we've identified hopefully someone that might be able to produce it with me. All the money that you give us is going towards the cause, just so you know. And someone wrote, I just bought the $20 program. Use it well, Dr. Trish. And I'm like, I will. We are here for the mission, and we will be, putting that money back into it. Another person who's probably not here, but maybe, I did want to cover this, not from a place of shame, but just from a place of helping you all to think about money this way, is that someone wrote, when, how this week I did the video on how porn exploits you. Someone wrote, you're exploiting us, Dr. Trish, by charging for these programs. And I wrote back, no, not true. And that's not true. And then I think it's the same person wrote, that the love of money is at the root of all evil. And I wrote back, you're right. The love of money is what's at the root of evil, not the fact that we all have to make money in this society. And, when people are in commerce, when we sell and we buy goods and we invest in things for ourselves and we invest in people that we like working with, when it comes down to it, money's just energy. When you try to hang on to it and you're trying to stockpile it and not let it flow through you, that's when it becomes a problem. But the reality is we need money to create these programs. And so I wrote, I need money to be here. I have to stay alive. I have 6 kids, for God's sake. But at the same, the money doesn't go to my kids. The whole point is that the 90-day program that I've created literally took me months of time and energy to create. After a lifetime of educating myself, it took me about 15 hours to record. That's my energy that I put into it. And then when you purchase it with money, it's your energy that you put back in towards me. We're giving each other energy. It's transaction's a wrong word because it feels sterile, but it is what connects us in a relationship. So I don't have any shame about that. I think they're super reasonably priced. I know they're expensive for a lot of people, but you get a lot for it. So, I just wanted to comment. I always, I'm a type 5 in terms of the personality that I teach people about in my programs. Anybody who's taken the 1999 program knows about the personality types. 5s have avarice, which means I grew up having money issues like most of us do. My parents can't spend money. They hold on to it. My parents could never charge a lot of money, but that keeps you in a limited mindset because you think you don't deserve to make money. And then you think you can't let money pass through you. So I've done a lot of work to be able to get to a point where I can ask people to invest in themselves with an amount that feels good to me. And at the same time, I do the same thing. I pay people more than I feel comfortable. So it's an important thing to stretch yourself on, but I am not exploiting anybody. I'm here for the mission. I don't want the money. I want to help people get out from underneath this. So,
and just to add to that, all the free content that you do put on YouTube to get this word out and continue giving strategies to be able to help people. So, that is something that is absolutely free. And,
and it's the mission. We're here for the mission. We have to stay alive, absolutely. But the mission is the important part. And David, I just wanted to write just to comment that I will talk about wet dreams in 1 second, but it's so funny because I said to my little daughter, who's going to be 11, I'm like, this girl's beat. I need some time off. And she's like, you should take 2 weeks off and write the book you're always talking about. This was yesterday in the car. So cute. She's like, you should take 2 weeks off and write that book you're always talking about. I have a book outlined. And I have been dying to write all of this into a book so that there's a resource, in the $10 department where books are, and I'm getting there. So I am planning that time to get away and to get it down and I started it. So it's in the works. And 90 days, David, without masturbation. That's great. That's amazing. And you don't have to have wet dreams. And, when I talk about it in terms of nocturnal emissions, sometimes that will creep into people's subconscious. So if you're getting a handle on things in the day, in your consciousness, it'll creep into your subconsciousness. So they may never appear. They never appear for many people. And likely they would have already appeared for you if you were going to experience them. So I would likely say that you've probably skipped that one. So that's a good thing. Okay, Jamie, what else do you have for us here?
I have a question from Timon. It says, I want to ask how I can get better with, giving eye contact to people, especially with women.
Yeah. So creating dignity and integrity in your life. I know it's difficult to track back your feelings of difficulty, making eye contact or approaching someone, tracking that back to your porn use, but it really impacts it. Social anxiety is one of the number one bad things that comes out of a porn habit, because it does have this moral incongruency and it makes you feel like you're doing something that you don't want to for most people. And then when you go to approach someone in the world, many people feel like they can be seen through. So they lack the confidence in being able to make eye contact or to approach people. It also messes with your frontal lobe. Your frontal lobe is being deactivated. Your frontal lobe is the part of your brain that controls the ability to do that. So being able to have a brain that's really working well allows you to be able to go into those contexts and be able to use the skills that are associated with those brain areas. And just to back that up for 1 second, I haven't talked about this in a long time. Honestly, I may never have talked about it on this channel, but I talk about it on my other YouTube channel where I just talk about brain stuff, is that our brains have been mapped with usually it's a 19 different areas of the brain. And we know exactly what skills and abilities each area of our brain controls. So when I talk about the frontal lobe, there's basically around 6 primary areas in the prefrontal cortex and the frontal lobe that have different skills. And socialization lies up here in the frontal lobe. So when you create hypofrontality, you knock that area out, then the ability to communicate, the ability to engage, it goes down, anxiety goes up, and that's just the reality. So when you leave the habit behind and you feel like you're very congruent with the person that you want to be, you can look someone in the eyes and your brain is working properly to help you do it.
Awesome. So I got one from Picho. What do you think about journaling? How to do it in your recovery?
Okay, thanks. This is a great question. So, journaling is very important. I journal all the time, probably too much, honestly, but I use journaling in many different ways. And I can tell you 2 very powerful ways right now that can help you. And I actually do these things in 2 different journals. So in one journal, I will, especially after experiences, and this is very important for recovery. And like I told you, everybody should be in recovery from something. So, I'm always trying to, sorry, I have to sneeze. I'm always trying to learn in my interaction style, in my relationships. And I use the term debriefing, being able to debrief when things happen to you so you can learn from them. And I have one journal where I do that exact thing. So when I have something that upsets me or is pushing my buttons, something that's overly exciting, it doesn't just have to be negative, I will go to my journal and write down like what happened and what it made me feel, so that then I can look at it and go, oh, so it was this in that argument or discussion, it was this that made me feel that way. What can I do next time to have some growth out of it? And, that's difficult if you don't know what those things are. And I told you, I always have somebody to work with, and I will say to them, I'll always say to my coach, like, tell me what I don't know, tell me what I don't know, because I'm in the box. What don't I know about this experience that you can help me see so that I can have that out of the box perspective so that I can move forward. And, I haven't been teaching myself for the last 25 years. Yes, I use books and programs, but I always have a coach who's moving me forward to help me see what I might not be able to see. But journaling is a really important way, because I'll put those thoughts and feelings down in my journal, and then I will parse through them. When people engage in coaching with me, that's exactly what I have them do. Even in the digital programs, I have people get a journal and start using the journal to learn and to explore how they're feeling. Feeling is a really important piece of recovery. Most of us don't know what we're feeling, and that's why we have to write it down and go, oh, that's what we're feeling. And you can have some really big takeaways. And going back to a little peek into my psyche today, maybe too much so right now, is that, like I told Gina this, I've been working too much. So my schedule has broken down, but it's changed too. So my kids all went back to school, and the things I had to do this week for my kids is literally ridiculous, but so cool too, But the balance in my life has been lost. But I had this realization the other day, and then I worked through it with my coach. The realization is I've got some challenging things that I need to address in my life. And I piled a couple things onto my work plate so I don't have to look at those things, because those things are hard and work is easy and enjoyable for me. but I didn't really see it until I created the time and space for myself to go, oh, that's why I'm working till 7:30 at night, because instead I really do need to look at these things and move towards them. It's called approach. I need to approach these things to move through them, to grow. And those are the things that are hard to do. So we avoid them, and porn's avoiding it. Work can be avoiding it. Exercising can be avoiding it. There's many ways we avoid those feelings in our life. When you write the feelings in your journal, you can go, no wonder why I haven't had an actual meal in a week. It's because I've busied myself up so much, right? And so that's how you can use journaling. The other way, the other journal that I use is for my thoughts. So journal number 1, feelings, experiences, debrief yourself, learn from it. Journal number 2 is where I organize my thoughts each day, because setting goals into the future, and somebody wrote a comment on the channel the other day that they had a relapse and they're like, no shame from the past. I'm focusing on the future. And I'm like, get some action steps going in the present and don't forget about the past. But, I changed the word. I had forgiveness, but I didn't want it to be misconstrued. It's forgiveness for yourself, it's just a mistake. So forgive yourself from the mistake. Healing. I changed the word to healing. You have to heal what's happened in the past so that you can make good action steps in the present to lead you towards the life that you're intentionally creating in the future. Very few people do that. Very few people set goals that they actually can begin to attempt to achieve. And so when you use a journal to do that, you can see the thing that I have people do is I have them write down 3 goals every day for objectives, goals that they're going to do each day to move towards their biggest goal in life. And then they write 3 gratitudes at the end of the night. So you can see yourself moving forward and appreciate it. And if you use a journal in those ways, there's no way it won't help you evolve and keep moving forward.
Awesome. So this is another question that was sent in from Rezid. So he has panic disorder. His doctor had prescribed him medication, and feeling drowsy and tired due to these, he started winging himself off. However, he's really struggling. Wet dreams was one of the questions, but you've already tackled that. But, he's feeling numbed out. And his main question is, what can he do to improve and maintain during the healing process, and how the drugs do affect his libido and
yeah, I get the gist of it, I think. So if there's anything else you can add, but the gist of that is that medications are a Band-Aid. And actually, I was reading a book yesterday that, I forget what it's called. I think it's called How to Do the Work. It's actually a pretty cool book, but I'm only in the first little bit of it. But, and it's a woman who's a therapist who realized she had to do the work herself too. And in there, she calls it basically the medical field, a Band-Aid nation. And I love that, because I call medicines a Band-Aid all the time. Like if you're bleeding out, you need a Band-Aid, right? You got to put a Band-Aid on that thing. But a Band-Aid isn't going to heal your wound. You need stitches to heal that wound. And then you need time for healing. And so, if your doctor prescribes medication for you, think of it as a Band-Aid. Like if you're in crisis, you need to stop the bleeding. And actually, I included this in the video that I put out yesterday, which, yes, I know, was 19 minutes and 49 seconds, but it was filled with goodness. It was filled with 19 minutes and 49 seconds of goodness. And in there, I talk about the 4 phases of healing a wound. Number 1 is to stop the bleeding, hemostasis, stop the bleeding, literally. But that only gets you this far. So then you have to do the work to actually heal. Medication doesn't do that. It actually makes it more difficult, because what the medication is doing 9 out of 10 times is it's lowering power in your brain so you don't feel the symptoms as much. That's why it lowers your libido, which can be good for people with hypersexuality, because their hypersexuality is brought down here while the medication's in their system. Unfortunately, it makes you drowsy and makes you feel junky and not motivated to move forward. So you can do that in the short run, but if you want to actually heal yourself, then you have to do the work. And the work can become exciting as you keep doing it. But and if you wean off, then being able to move forward with less and less of that. But when you come off of it, guess what's there? All those feelings that I was talking about. And I still have to make a video. I was looking it up. Who sings that song? I forget who it is. Baby, I Got the Feels. Anybody know that song? I was singing it yesterday. I won't say, I will save you all from singing because it makes my teenage boys cringe so hard when I sing in the videos. Which actually, I think I only sing in the videos in my programs. I don't think I've sung on YouTube yet. But Baby, I Got the Feels, feeling your feelings is a good thing. And we all try to avoid that because it's difficult. So, when you come out of that medication fog, the feels are going to be there and you need to move through them. And that's why having a coach or a therapist or someone you can trust, a friend, somebody who can offer you some strategies and a good listening ear can really be powerful.
So this is a question from Lou, the gamer, and I've seen this from a couple of people. Can porn withdrawals make you physically sick?
Yeah, it definitely can. And, I think the more sick you feel, it's usually because your brain is really rewiring itself. And, that's real. That's real because the way that your brain's using electrical energy and neurochemicals begins to change as soon as that cycle of when you would usually give yourself a hit of that chemical and you don't give yourself the hit, the cycle's being messed with. And it's a good thing because it's the rewiring process. But, again, it's very much like someone with a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction where, physical illness runs rampant with not giving your brain what it wants the moment that it's used to getting it. And the cycle is broken. But when you move through it, by day 83, you should not feel sick. So, but I'm going to talk about this, Lou, is that day 83, if you still don't feel well, it's probably because you are still giving your brain hits of dopamine. So maybe you haven't watched pornography in 83 days. This is very classic, and this isn't zero judgment here, just so you know. I work with a lot of people where they'll go, I still feel like junk. Or even when I work with people and they're doing my remote neurofeedback and coaching program, I'll pull up their brain and I'll be like, your brain's moving forward a little, but I would expect it to move forward faster. And then they'll go, yeah, I don't feel that different. And then I'll break it down with them, like, what's going on? And they'll say, I have porn thoughts 12 times a day. And I stop and think about it 12 times a day. You're giving yourself this hit of dopamine 12 times a day. And if you do that, you really haven't given your brain the time to unwire and rewire. Unwiring is you don't think about it. You don't linger in anything sexual. That's why, to answer another question, which I don't know if it's out there, but people ask me this a lot and I just got an email, giving yourself a washout period can be really powerful. Giving yourself an abstinence. That's why when people really are going gung-ho, they will not do anything sexual for 90 days. Because they can gauge if they thought about anything sexual, like it's either yes or no. And if the answer is no, then they've decreased their hypersexuality, going from hyper to zero. And going from hyper to healthy can be difficult because you might linger in this having lots of thoughts or just having a lot of sex with your partner. You're still in this like hypersexual mode. And then that will keep your brain in this space where it hasn't unwired and rewired, and you will feel sicker for longer. So, Lou, you might not want to hear it, but think about, how much your mind is going towards sexual thoughts. You need to get rid of them as much as possible. Maybe give yourself an abstinence period. Definitely, if you're including masturbation still, give that a break. And so you can just go, you know what? I haven't done anything sexual in 90 days. And then your brain should feel better and your body and everything should feel better.
So to piggy off that one, Ahmed says, what are good, healthy dopamine substitutors?
Yeah, that's a great question. Stephen, thank you for your donation. I see it here. I'm looking at it. So good and healthy dopamine substitutes are things that you like to do. And I'll give a couple examples, but it's different for all people. So here is an exercise for everyone. Think of 5 hobbies or activities or anything like that that you in particular like to do, because it's different. Like, what are 5 things that you like to do? And so if it's golf, it might be darts, it might be pool, it might be swimming, it might be Toastmasters, that group where you go and you do talks and speeches, which I've always threatened to go to because I thought that'd be fun. It might be boxing, like I like to do. It might be reading. When you do the things that you yourself love, then you are on purpose in your hobbies and your work. Your work can be dopamine producing. It should be. So like basically the way to balance your brain and to have a balanced brain is to do work that you love, then hang out with people that you love. That's dopamine producing, and go do the hobbies that you love. Painting, anything, any hobby, and, especially stay away from all things sexual. Hey, Corey, how's it going? Daxed, I'm not sure if that message is for me about blaming men because women do it. But I would like to comment on that just quickly, is that I'm not sure what that means. Not really. Anyways, because, we know, and again, this is probably loaded, and I talked about it really quickly in the exploitation video, is that most people who make porn are not there by their own volition. And some of them are literally trafficked to be there. The others are kind of mind controlled to be there because they have their own wounds. So this isn't a man or a woman thing. I'm not blaming anybody. I think everybody's wrapped up in this, and it really is very dangerous. So there's no blame here. What I'm trying to do is people who realize that this isn't a healthy thing for them to do in their lives and they want a way out. It's really difficult to come out of this by yourself. And I know that. And so I felt like I had this secret that nobody knew, that how you can actually leave this behind. And that's what I'm here for. So with zero blame, because I don't even blame the porn industry. I know probably I should, but I think blame eats away the person who's blaming. So why spend any of my energy on that? I think people in the porn industry are wounded souls too. So, but I definitely know we'd all be better without it. So anyway, okay, Jamie, what do you got for me?
Question from Neil. There are many times I wake up in the middle of the night or morning that have just, I'm aroused. I have this overwhelming desire to touch myself, which eventually leads to climax. I've heard many recommendations about trying to distract myself, but none of these tend to work for me. So
I was looking for my notes because I just wrote notes down too. I was going to hold it up to show you that I just wrote notes down to make a video on this, because this is very common. And I talked to a lot of people this week about it. What I wanted to share with people is that when you feel aroused, those sexual feelings are actually a call for mood regulation. They're just masked. It's a disguise. And someone wrote in a comment yesterday that I'm an angel in disguise. I'm like, what am I disguised as? A middle-aged neuroscientist who rants all the time about the dangers of porn. But, that's the sexual urges are, in fact, they're a disguise. They're like a call for mood regulation. Your brain has been trained. And I was telling a middle-aged man, if you're listening, we had this conversation the other day because I said it's like a puppy who's been trained in the wrong direction, where when the puppy's upset, he's learned to go to porn to feel good, just to get pleasure. Because first, when you start consuming porn or having sexual thoughts or being aroused or have the feeling like you want to touch yourself, it first was to get pleasure. Then it shifts to you need it, because it becomes the negative feedback loop that I was talking about. So you have to retrain the puppy. And I joked with that gentleman that it's no longer a puppy, it's an old dog. And then I'm like, 3-year-old dog, let's just keep it at 3-year-old dog so you don't feel bad about it. But you have to train this dog who's been doing this for a long time. And so it's a call for, a lot of times people, when they're leaving porn behind, like I already said today here, it'll creep into your unconscious in the middle of the night when your thinking mechanism shut down. It creeps in to try to trick you, especially when, like I said to you, addiction is sleuthy, man. Like, it'll come at you. That's why I don't blame anybody, because it really is tricky. It tricks you and then you trick other people. Like, that's just the essence of it. So don't be tricked by that. when you're in the midst of this reboot and you have those urges, just know that it's a call for mood regulation and looking at those feelings, peeling back the layer under the sexual feelings and trying to see what in your life should you approach. Just like I told you, I have to approach things that I haven't been. What in your life can you approach to make life less stressful, to have less triggers, to not need to self-soothe? When you touch yourself, it's absolutely, there's no way around it. It's a self-soothing behavior. So you have to teach yourself to approach things so you don't need to self-soothe as much. And in those moments, so here's the takeaway is that if you start doing that in the day, if you approach the things you need to button up that maybe you're not looking at in your life right now, the feelings in the night will go away because they've crept into your unconscious at night because you haven't been looking at them with your consciousness in the day. And, when it comes to sleep, to get better sleep, you make changes in the day, not necessarily of what you're doing while you're sleeping. While you're asleep, your brain should be able to get into the sleep cycle and just knock your action out so that your brain, your body, your mind, everything can heal and recover. When we sleep, we literally make new brain cells and our body repairs itself. So attending to things in the day is the key, and doing more dopamine producing activities and looking at what might still be there that you need to take care of. And in the programs that I offer, there's a section on how to unwire trauma and family dysfunction. They linger in your nervous system. They can create problems. That's the stuff I'm always trying to move towards and engage. So think about what you can do in the day, not in that moment, but in the moment, recognize if you don't give in to that urge, the feelings are going to stay with you. And then you might be able to explore what they're telling you that you need to do in your life. And if you give your brain that hit of dopamine, the dopamine is designed to numb your brain out so that you don't have to have those feelings or thoughts anymore. And that's when the cycle continues. So to break the cycle, you have to, one good strategy is to have a playlist next to you, music, because you don't want to think about anything, and put some music on and listen to the music and get back to sleep. Or you can focus on your breath and literally just say in and out while you're focusing on your breath so you can let those urges pass and get back to sleep. I know it's difficult to do in the moment. Focus on the day. All right, Jamie, what do you got?
All right. So Victor says, what happens to the brain in the first 90 days?
Yeah, so it's unwiring and rewiring. And that's an easy way of saying that when you are stuck in this porn cycle, your brain is flip-flopping between hyper arousal, that's very high, fast energy, coupled with exhausted, very slow energy. So I always talk about it in the videos as being out here in the extremes, too fast and too slow. And so then you're basically always going between these two in the cycle. Everybody has a cycle. So at the top of the cycle, when you feel triggered, your brain's using very fast energy. Then when you act out, you get all that rush of dopamine to flood your system so that that fast hyperarousal energy comes down and you knock it out into hypoarousal, which is what helps you sleep, take the edge off. But then there's a B effect, which makes that go lower and stress go higher again. That's why you're always swinging. I call it the pendulum effect, always swinging back and forth between these extremes. So when you stop watching porn, if you stop thinking about sex, you stop doing sexual things, what happens is your brain comes out of these extremes and this starts going down, hyperarousal and that hypoarousal, and up comes perfect arousal, which is calm focus. So literally what's happening is the way that your brain uses electrical energy changes. It no longer is using too fast and too slow simultaneously or flip-floppy. That goes down and it's now starting to use calm focused energy. But in those first 90 days, that's why you don't feel well, because it's used to the pattern, even though it's not healthy for you. And you probably definitely in parts of the cycle don't feel good, which is what leads you back into porn use. Or if you go right back in, you're avoiding feeling bad. What happens is as that unwires and your brain's slowing down and refreshing itself into calm focus, it changes the way that the neurochemicals are released too. And then your frontal lobe will come back online. It will be able to think. And part of, this is a self-soothing kind of self-sabotage behavior, not kind of, actually a self-sabotage behavior, because you're knocking out your own frontal lobe so that it can't think about things. We know that that's part of the deal. So now your frontal lobe's there again, and it's telling you a whole bunch of stuff. It's telling you like, I got to think about this. I got to do this. And so if you approach instead of avoid, you can move through it. But if you go back into avoiding, you have to approach. The reality is you have to approach. People don't want to. I didn't want to. I still don't want to, but in the hard things that I have to. And that's why when I talk to my coach, he's like, what are you avoiding? And I'm like, dang, I'm avoiding this and I need to approach, don't I? I'm like, I know I need to approach. I just don't feel like it. And, the same thing goes for you when we can all move forward. Your brain literally is unwiring itself out of that pattern, rewiring itself in the healthy pattern. And by the end of the 90 days, you should be well on your way. That's why if you're 83 days in and you're still feeling junky, you haven't created that change in electrical energy and the cascading effect of neurochemicals. Because if you, I just uploaded the podcast with Alexandra Katihakis, and, like she was saying, 1 year later, you should feel magnanimously better if you've had actual sobriety. And so maintaining actual sobriety mentally and physically is the important part, and you'll start feeling better.
Awesome. So John had sent a question in about how about dealing with leftover thoughts of real encounters.
Yeah, that's called euphoric recall. Euphoric recall can be real encounters or can be something that you've watched. And so you're recalling it for the euphoria of it. And guess what produces euphoria? Lots and lots of dopamine. So that's what I'm alluding to, or not really alluding, saying is that, if you find yourself in this euphoric recall, you are firing up the old neural mechanisms, the ones we are trying to get rid of. And it's been internalized. So for so many people, they don't even need porn. In the end, they don't need it. They get more from it when you consume it, but the whole process has been internalized. So unless you choose to do new things and to make new choices and stop doing some of the habits that you've done, like thinking and euphoric recall, then you have to choose that and start doing it actively, and your brain will unwire and rewire. Hi, Adam. I see you're in the house here, buddy. What's going on? I haven't talked with you in a little while. I hope you're well. What else you got here, Miss Jamie?
Just lost my question. So do you think, this is from Mr. Torres Art, do you think everyone who watches porn has a porn problem?
I think most people who watch porn have a porn problem. I would say, I know that from science, actually. Science shows that the majority of people who begin to consume pornography with any regularity have a problematic porn use. And I would say yes, because of the reaction that it creates in your brain, is that it hijacks your brain pretty quickly. And, science does show, and you'll see sometimes in the comments on the channel that it'll say, someone will go, porn's not addictive. Sometimes it's people who are highly addicted who say that, but they'll go, I've watched porn once or twice and it never did anything for me. Just like alcohol, there's some people out there that just alcohol does nothing for them and they never start to drink and they don't have to and they just don't care. But for most people, when they start to have a drink or two, they like drinking. And so we know that the majority of the United States, at least, is wrapped up in alcohol misuse. And again, it's on this continuum. When I was on Austin Burns' podcast and he asked me, he's trying to get me, and I'm going to talk about this on a video. He was trying to get me to say that there's alpha males and beta males, which I commented yesterday. This concept's ridiculous, is what I've decided. And I know people aren't going to want to hear that on this channel, but I'm going to expand on that in 1 second. But he didn't tell me, he didn't ask me that, but he wanted to know if I think there's always an opposite to something. That's how he started the question. Do you think there's always black and white, basically? And I'm like, no, I actually don't. I didn't know where we were going with the alpha beta thing, but I'm like, no, I don't think that. I think everything exists on a continuum. I think there's black, there's white, and then there's all different shades of gray. Everything exists on a continuum. So does problematic porn use. So it can start as not a big deal, but like we already talked about, the addictive mechanism might have already hooked you and you just don't even know it yet. For most people, the seeds are planted. And so then if you water the seeds, they grow from use to misuse to abuse to addiction. And that's the continuum. And the thing I want to say about alpha males and beta males is like every person in the whole world has the ability to be an alpha anything in your own life. Like if we're worried about comparing ourselves to everybody, which is so toxic, it's a totally toxic way to look at anything. How I compare to you, how I compare to the me of last year is what I'm going for. And so that makes me always a better version of myself. Every person has the ability to be down here on their continuum or up here. We all have the ability to be completely shredded physically, every last one of us, if we want to work out every day and only eat lean protein and I was gonna say chicken and salads. And so you can do that, but most of us don't choose to do that. I don't choose to do that. I choose to eat pretty well so I can stay over here. But I have the ability to be a better version of myself, physically, mentally, intellectually, relationship. We all do. So like what we choose to do on our continuum is what we choose to do. There's not beta males who can't, alpha males who can. Everybody can. And it literally doesn't even matter what other people are doing. It matters what we're doing. And I was reading in the Napoleon Hill book that I've also been reading that, and I might have talked about this last week where, because I've told probably my kids a couple times, where in it Napoleon Hill's amazing, from the 1930s. Think and Grow Rich is his original piece that everybody knows. But he talks about when he interviewed, the top minds of the day, and he also interviewed 2,500 people who were failures. The failures are those who didn't achieve in their life what they wanted to achieve. And that's my definition of failure. I don't think there's any failures, but it's a choice. Like if you don't have the courage and you can't inspire yourself or work with someone who does inspire and motivate you to move closer to this end, then you stay down here. But, we all have it in us to be better or worse versions of ourselves.
That's a really powerful statement. And one thing I think, a lot of people tend to do is comparing yourself. And that's one of the worst things that you could possibly do. You can only compare yourself to yourself. And I think it's a great thing that you do to be able to only compare yourself to who you were last year. And that's the only way that you're able to really know.
I try.
That's great.
I quote unquote fail at that all the time. I told you, my friends are working hard, and then I have to say to myself, like, what they have isn't even what I want. I have to remind myself. I told you we went to the concert last weekend, which was really fun. We had a great time. I told you we were going to see the Black Crowes. It was great. It ended up being a great time. But, my bestie works a lot, and, she's cranking. I have to remind myself, I don't want to work a lot. Like, we have different goals, and we have different schedules. We have different lives. So when I see her doing that, I'm proud of her that she's creating. But for a second there's like a twinge of like, maybe I should be doing that. And then I'm like, no, I shouldn't. I'm doing what I want to do. She's doing what she wants to do. They are, in fact, different things. And, intentionally, we surround ourselves with people who think like us, who are always trying to be better versions of themselves. So it's really fun to be able to take pride in other people's accomplishments. But at the same time, we all know that we're all kind of doing that. We're reminding ourselves to stay in our own lane. Bartholomew, thank you for your donation. We really appreciate it. We are excited to be moving forward on this mission, and I'm very grateful that you are helping us.
So here's a question from Chris. Love your channel. Do you think it's wise to wait a certain amount of time for recovery from dating, before dating?
Yeah, Chris, this is a great question. And I've been thinking about this a lot lately. And again, you have to create some space and time to see what's going to work for you. But I'm going to tell you the factors right now. The factors are going back to sexualizing people or situations or objectification. So like it's very good to wait if you can, because you can feel that more. You can feel how much your mind's going to sex instead of going to connection. So like basically like the parameter and the factor is that if you actually are moving into a dating situation for the connection, And for intimacy, then that can be really helpful and really healthy. But it's really hard to know that when your brain is hypersexualized, because I told you this thing's tricky. It might trick you into thinking you're going towards that relationship for intimacy, but you're actually going towards it to try to get some sex because you haven't been watching porn and masturbating. So when you create more awareness around that for yourself, then you can make some good decisions. So it depends if you're in a place where you think you're self-aware enough to know where you're at, again, on that continuum, because it is a continuum. You used to be on the continuum where sex was the most important and the most gratifying thing that you were doing, whether it be pornography, masturbation, or just having a ton of sex with people you don't care about. But if you're trying to, and there's other sexual behaviors too, but if you're trying to, go down to the other side of the continuum where you're having meaningful sex that has intimacy and connection, and you're ready to create that with a person, then go for it. And, worst case scenario, if you find that you really like this person, but you are in fact objectifying that person, there's lots of learning opportunities in there that you can create a healthy relationship by course correcting as you go, by taking new action steps. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think it could be a good thing. It just really depends where you're at in the journey and being able to be aware. And then when you are dating that person, is it the actual person that you're interested in connecting with, or is it just you want to have some sex, or is it that you want that person to dote on you and make you feel strong and powerful in a sexual way? Because of course, relationship dynamics can be healthy in that way.
So I've had a couple of people ask, am I able to block people on the chat? And I don't. I'm sorry. There, are people that have their opinions, and they can certainly put them on. We may not agree with them, but
yeah. And a long time ago, actually, right when I first threw out the first couple videos, someone wrote, "Why are you deleting my comments?" It was someone who was putting nasty comments, not nasty, but strongly against what I'm trying to share here, which is all based on science primarily. And I don't delete any comments anywhere. And if someone wants to show up here to play the devil's advocate, and I actually tried to get one person so far to come on our podcast to have an engaging conversation from different angles, that doesn't scare me. There's no fear for me in that, because I know how much this is hurting people around the world. I'm not here to prove anything to anybody, but I think a conversation is healthy. And also, from the people who are here and don't want to see comments like that, you can take it as a marker of the growth in your emotional maturity when you can look at those comments. And if someone's frustrating you, this is a perfect opportunity to, I was going to sing, I couldn't do it. Feel the feels, right? Baby, I got to feel the feels that you're having. Like, why does that person's comment frustrate you? And, the only comments that I take off the channel are those that are triggering to other people. I've had to do one or two of them this week. I'm sure I haven't gotten all of them, but, and those that out and out are super rude and disrespecting to me. When people call me Karen, I got that one doesn't bother me. But if it has like real nasty language in it, then I take them off. But, we can respect other people's opinions here. So that's, okay. What do you got?
All right. So William, how does one actually increase the function of the prefrontal lobe? Is there any brain exercises that we can do this?
Yeah, definitely. So get out there and practice the things that are tricky. But again, that might be hard. I'll elaborate on that in a second. But that might be tricky if you still are consuming pornography. So if you have stopped watching pornography, you have, eliminated or figured out how to have healthy masturbation habit, which again is probably loaded at the beginning of this journey, then you want to fire that frontal lobe up by being able to thinking about, that's why I always say, get on purpose in your work, your relationships, and your hobbies. When you do those things, it reactivates your frontal lobe. Literally, if you know social anxiety is something that you struggle with, then get yourself into social contexts and situations where you practice socializing with a person and create a plan. This past week, I created a plan for a few people in terms of social anxiety and how they can approach. If you remember nothing besides the word approach from this live in particular, that's what we're talking about. So when things are challenging for you and you approach them and engage in them, you are using your brain to do those things. But again, remember to scaffold. Scaffolding is when you build scaffolding on a building so you can build floor 1 and then 2 and then 3. You can't build floor 57 until you build, 1 through 56. So building yourself up to do things that are more challenging. Get on purpose in your work. Do something that makes you think. When you feel yourself extending yourself, that's where growth is. That's where growing pains come from. That's why I always joke when I'm in situations that are difficult for me, I'm like, damn it, here I grow again. Literally, I'll say that to myself before I have to go do the tricky things. Like, I have to go do this. This is how I grow. I have to approach. I have to have a difficult conversation with someone. I have to, do this, that, the other things. When it's hard and you go do it a little, then a lot, your brain is reactivating itself. And that's an amazing thing.
It is. Here's one from Mark Dixon. Dr. Trish, what is the general you had referred to as punching instead of other things in dealing with past traumas?
Yeah, the general is, I put 1 or 2 pictures and see if I have one close by in my phone. The general is my punching bag. And here's one of me and him the other day that I sent I don't have any makeup on, so I don't know if you can see him. When I work out in my backyard, that guy is a punching bag, and he looks like a general. You see his dirty look? He looks like an army general who is, I don't know if there's a better one of him. It's just a close-up I sent my husband because he wanted me to meet him for lunch, and I'm like, sorry, bro, I can't. I'm already on a date with the general. And I was not in a position. I would have been at lunch in like an hour and a half, so I couldn't do it. But the general is my punching bag, and punching, I think everybody in the whole world should punch because it offloads just a massive amount of stress, and it's really, really good. And literally getting all that trauma out physically is an amazing way to offload. Screaming, hopefully somewhere not public. I talked to a woman this week. She's like, I go outside and primal scream every day now. I'm like, awesome. I'm sure your neighbors love that, but, being able to offload that stress, working out is the number one way you can offload stress, literally moving your body. If you don't work out at all, go for a fast power walk. That'll get your blood flowing, get your nervous system like cranking to offload. But the best way to deal with past traumas is to take the cover and pull it up and actually look at them and do the work that you need to. And that is terrifying for most people. And, if you have past traumas, doing that with someone safe and trained is really the best way to do it because they're buried in your nervous system for a reason. They're buried there because they're hard to look at and they're difficult to deal with. And in my programs, I give some Gestalt techniques. You can look up that Gestalt techniques for trauma because Gestalt it's Gestalt. They're therapeutic techniques that pull you out of your head into your body so that you can actually process and integrate experiences that you've had in the past so that you can learn from them. Like I just said, heal the past, I said a little while ago, so you can take new action steps in the future so that you can move forward. But stress builds up every day. It's ridiculous, the stress that we put ourselves in. So when you punch or you scream or you work out, you do crunches, you do push-ups, you do, you run, you blast a sprint, just blast a quick sprint and you feel so good. You're like, you can feel the heat coming off your brain. That's an important thing to do. Okay, I'm going to have to wrap up in one. Balpreet, thank you for your donation. I totally appreciate it. I'm not sure what Hitler is going there, but I don't know, maybe we can block user. Here you go. Blocked. You like that?
Yeah.
There you go. We can block people. I just did.
Right in time.
I just did. And Jamie now knows how she can block people. We try not to do that. Oh, that was probably a test. Will she really block me if I start going off at a tangent? Yes, I will. Just figured it out. Okay, so I have to go because I have a 1 p.m. appointment. I'm going to bounce off, Jamie. Thank you, everybody, for joining us again. I hope to be able to help you. We're we're here every week to be able to, except for the last week of the month, which I don't think is that. No, that's 2 weeks from now. So we'll be back next week. So if you have any questions, let us know. And until then, have an amazing weekend. Make a plan again. Bingo, we can handle bingo. I can handle that one, right? Joseph. Yeah, exactly, David. Okay, thank you. Have an amazing weekend, and I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, bye, James. See you later.
Bye.